This episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast is brought to you by Smart Music. Still the trusted way to connect teachers and students, the new Smart Music is in the cloud, so it works with the devices your students have today. Best of all, you can use it for free. Learn more at smartmusic.com. You're listening to the Music Tech Teacher podcast, episode number 17. Welcome to the Music Tech Teacher podcast. Music tech tips, lesson ideas, advice, news, and interviews, especially for music teachers. Brought to you by midnightmusic.com.au. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Katie Wardrobe from midnightmusic.com.au, the place for music teachers to get the help they need using technology in music education. It's also the home of the Midnight Music community, where you can find music tech online courses, video tutorials, tips, and personalised support. If you'd like more information about the community and a special offer just for podcast listeners, go to midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. Today I've got 7 tips for staying sane and surviving technology in the music classroom. In addition to the tips that I'm going to give you in a second, I'm also going to give you an action step for each one, something that you can try straight away in the classroom tomorrow or the day after, as soon as possible, I guess. And if you're listening right now while you're away from your computer, don't worry. I've got all the links and information that I'm going to mention in the show notes for this episode, which you can find on my website at midnightmusic.com.au/17. So I've been running music tech workshops and courses and presenting at conferences for quite some time now. And over the years, I've picked up a few things, found that I've been doing some things over and over, which have really made my life a little bit easier. And some of the things are ones that I've picked up just from experience, I suppose, and maybe also by watching other people. The first thing I wanted to mention as a tip is to practice using technology, and this is something I really have done over the years. There's nothing worse than getting up in front of a group of people, whether it's students or other teachers, and not feeling comfortable with what you're doing. It's really awful. It brings back those days, when you're doing teaching rounds and, teaching for the first time, or maybe even conducting an ensemble for the first time. Confidence is everything. And one of the things that I've found has really helped over the years is thinking of technology like it's a musical instrument. So I treat it in that way, in that I do practice and I start small. I pick just one thing. So that might be one aspect of a new software program or one website or one part of a website that I'm going to use. And I use it a few times so that I get comfortable with it. So really it is like a musical instrument in that sense. You would start small with short pieces or just a few notes at a time or a few chords if you're on a guitar, and use them fairly often until you're comfortable with them and can change chords quickly or play the notes well, and you get practice at doing those early simple activities first. So technology is no different. I really do think try it out on your own first before getting in front of a group of students and using it. And it's also really, really good if you can to try out whatever it is in your classroom environment. So what I mean by that is if you're going to try out a new website or maybe it's something that's interactive, if you can, go into the classroom before students are with you and actually plug your computer into the data projector and show it on the screen. See how it looks and feels up there. This is particularly pertinent if you have an interactive whiteboard. I have lived on the edge a little bit in the past and thought about something I might want to do in a presentation or a workshop on an interactive whiteboard, and just thought, I'll just show that in the session. And once it's on the interactive whiteboard, it can be really different to how you would use it on your laptop with a mouse and so on. So really do test it out. And like I said, if you can do it in the environment where you're going to present or run your class, it's a really good thing if you can do that before other people get in front of you. I feel much more comfortable when I'm using things that I've done in the past, already in front of a group. So my action step for this very first tip is to just take one simple thing and try it with some of your students. So that might be a simple interactive website. Something like Incredibox is a very popular one with classroom teachers. That can be a great one to have a go with. Hook theory is a great one if you're looking at sort of chords and chord sequences or chord patterns and how they fit together in, pop songs. Maybe you just want to take that one and you might be doing some songwriting with students. That could be a great place to start with, just using hook theory. The Chrome Music Lab has a great set of tools, and each single one of those is very simple and very focused on a specific music aspect or element. So taking one of those might be a great thing. They have one called oscillators, for instance, which shows you kind of like little characters, which when you click on the screen and hold your finger down, they'll actually basically sing for you in a wave pattern of some kind, so like a sine wave and so on. That might be a great thing if you're introducing, sound or the science of sound. Maybe you can use that one as a little thing. So give one of those a go. Try it as a hands-on activity if you've got access to multiple computers or devices, but even just to try something on the data projector with your students as a group can be a great place to get started. Now, my second tip possibly is my favourite one, and this one is to have a contingency plan in place. So we all know that technology does not go smoothly 100% of the time, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but look, if you have some kind of contingency in place in your head or written down somewhere, it can really make you feel a lot more comfortable about using the technology in the first place. So I still do this. Even after many years of using technology with groups of people, I still have some kind of contingency in place. Now, because I've been doing it for quite a long time, I can think of contingency options on the fly, so it's not such a big deal anymore. But in the early days, I really did write them down and think through, what if the worst happens? So for instance, if you're going to rely on using an online tool of some sort, whether it's a website or online software or an interactive kind of thing online, you need to think of the contingency if you don't have internet. The chances of that happening, it's not all the time. And it's, for me, less and less in recent years, I suppose, than when I first started working with music technology. But it does happen. The internet goes down, or maybe it's just really slow that day and that website won't load. So do have some kind of contingency plan in place if you can't get that thing to work. So you might have, software that doesn't rely on being online to use. You might have a non-tech activity planned that you can do if you can't get the tech plan, the tech tool to work. You might have, instrumental playing or singing, even better, as an alternative option. One of the things that I do with videos, particularly if I'm presenting a video, as part of, say, a keynote speech or something, I don't ever put the link to the online version of that video in my presentation. I will actually download the video file ahead of time and put it into my slides that way. That just means that I'm not relying on the internet to work when I'm speaking to 300 people at once, which is a really bad thing. If the video is not working in the middle of that presentation, it does not look good. So doing something like that, downloading a video ahead of time so that you are absolutely sure it's going to work when you need it to, that can be a really good thing. So the action plan for this one is to, anytime you're using technology, is to have one or two alternatives of things that you can do if the technology doesn't work. Now, if it's not an internet issue, your alternative may actually be another tech activity or something. So if one app is not working, for instance, on your iPad, you might have another app where you can do the same activity and that one is working. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a non-tech related contingency plan, but just have a few ideas written down or in the back of your mind. My third tip for surviving technology is to create your own support network. Now, over the years, because I work for myself, I don't have an official sort of IT staff person that I can call on as such. For those of you that are working in schools, it's likely that you'll have some sort of IT staff member that you can call on. Now, some schools, I know schools teachers that I've talked to here in Australia, they don't necessarily have that person on call at all times. Some of our smaller elementary schools here, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere, they don't have a single IT person there that's, present at the school 5 days a week. They will have that person come in maybe, every week on a Tuesday, or they might be there for 2 days a week. So, of course you can save up non-urgent issues to ask them and wait for them to come in that day. But inevitably there's going to be some issues that crop up which need fixing instantly. And, this can be really bad, particularly if your class is walking into the room at the time and you're about to speak to a group of people. So you need to have some other things in place where you can, find answers or get help. Now, an obvious one is to Google. So just head to Google and ask, type in some search terms there and see if you can find the answer. And YouTube, same sort of thing. You can type in search terms, see if you can find the answer. It's not always the quickest thing going to Google and YouTube, because you've got to sift through the answers to find the one that you need. But I can tell you some tips that I've picked up over time. So if your computer or a device is showing some sort of error message, there's an error message on the screen which is completely preventing you do what you need to do at that time, I would copy and paste exactly that error message and put that into the Google search bar and press enter. And somewhere online, someone else will have had that same error message, and it will show you forum results or, help pages on a website where it will tell you how to solve that problem, hopefully solve that problem. So that's one of the first things I would do. You can do the same thing into YouTube, type in the exact error message or, just a couple of key words from that error message and see if you can find an answer there. Now with YouTube particularly, and with Google I should say as well, I often add in the current year that we're living in my search terms. So if I'm searching for something today, I would enter my keywords in or copy and paste my error message, and I might add 2017 at the end before I hit the search button. Now the reason for that is, and you would have had this before I'm sure, where you go and search for something on YouTube and you find a video which seems to solve your problem, but then you find out it was created 5 years ago and the software looks completely different or works in a different way to what it does now. So if you can add your current year or even the previous year into your search, your search terms, that can help narrow down and give you a more recent result. I would warn you as well about, just sort of going to a video to find the answer and make sure you do check the year that video was created, because, if it's something, for instance, software related, say GarageBand for a Mac, if you go and search for something about GarageBand, GarageBand has changed quite some time over the years. So, if you find an early video, it may look completely different to the version of the software that you have at that time. In addition to searching online, a great thing to do is to have a formal or informal network of people that you can call on. So this might just be another colleague at the school, and this can be great if there's a couple of things that you know quite well. It can be good to trade off information about tech tools or software. So a colleague at school might be another music teacher, if you have another music teacher you can talk to who also uses the same things that you do. Or if it's a non-music specific thing that you're doing, so might be to do with your online learning management system where you share work, or maybe if you use Google Drive at school, you don't necessarily need another music teacher to help you with that. You just need a teacher that is comfortable with Google Drive and can help you with it. So work out who those people are in the school. I'm sure you can pick up on that quite easily. Go and make friends with them, go and chat to them at lunchtime, share a coffee or something, and, ask them if they don't mind, can I call on you if I've got a few issues? You might even have a teacher that is assigned that role as a kind of a leading teacher, or, the go-to person for a specific software tool or resource that the whole school uses. So find out who that person is and see if you can call on them. Find out, when is an appropriate time to call on them. If it's not an urgent thing, they might prefer you to chat to them at lunchtime or before school or whatever it is, or send them an email. Other colleagues that you can call on, which may not be at your actual school, might include people perhaps in a local, say, music teacher network. There might be some sort of music teacher network that you can join and hook up with. Great place to ask questions about, things that people have used already in their classroom. I find one of the most useful bits of information to get from people who have used apps or software ahead of me is what went wrong for them. What are the things I need to avoid? So if you've used something before, you might be able to also share with them, okay, I've used Google Drive to do this, this, and this, and this thing went wrong, or I couldn't find a way to do this, so I had to create this workaround. And that's great information to share with other people. It just saves them the issues in the long run. Another thing that you can do is, and this is a stereotypical thing to suggest, but ask a teenager. Many of us have teenagers in our lives, whether it's our own kids or friends, or nieces or nephews. They are often fairly tech savvy with certain things, not with everything, but with certain things. That can be a great thing to do, is to ask one of them to show you how to do something. So if you're setting up Apple TV, for instance, and you're trying to work out how to do that, a teenager might be able to help you with that quite easily. My eldest son is 11, almost 12, and he's heading into that role. He loves to find out answers for himself. And I'm finding it great at home. I can just say, hey, do you know how to do this? Or where did you find this in the menu? He's like me. He's very happy to sort of go looking inside software just to see what's there and where to find things. And so he and I help each other in that way. And it's just really useful. He gets quite proud that he can help me sometimes. And I think most kids feel that way. Find out places also that you are able to ask silly or dumb questions. I know lots of you don't like asking questions of other people because you feel like you're the only one with that question, or that you're the last person to know, or that, that question's probably been asked hundreds of times before. I can tell you now, and I truly, honestly, really want you to take this on board, that it is not the case. You are not alone. And I know that anytime someone asks me a question in a workshop or in email or online somewhere, I know that is probably representing another 300 people who have the same question. I really welcome those things that people think are silly and dumb questions in all of my workshops and everything. I don't care that people don't know things. If you don't ask, you'll never learn. So it's a great thing to just ask the question. And I can guarantee that other people will have that same question if you have it. So I make a big point in my workshops of not making people feel silly about the questions that they ask. And that's the comment I get from a lot of people afterwards, is that it's the first time they haven't been made to look silly or feel dumb. And I just think, if you don't know, you don't know. So just ask the question. But I know that there are probably people in your life that would make you feel silly for asking the question. So seek out the places where you don't feel silly. So, of course, I have my online community, which I've mentioned before, and that is a place where silly and dumb questions are completely welcome. And either I will answer them, or, other people in the community will chime in and answer them too. And if you want to know more information about that, I'll give you a link in the show notes. So that's my online community space where you can take courses, but it's got a big forum area. So, and this is why I set it up in the way I did, is so that people can feel free and comfortable to ask silly questions, or not so silly questions, about anything that you're using, and we'll try and find an answer for it and a solution. The other place that can be great to ask is perhaps in a Facebook group. Now, there's a large music teachers Facebook group, and it's just called Music Teachers. There's over 20,000 music teachers in there. So you can post a question in there. People really don't mind answering and helping out each other. And as I said, there's probably more than one person that's got the same question as you. The other thing you can do in that group, and it's probably best to do this first before you post a new question, is to use the little search box. There's a search box, I think it's sort of top right of the Facebook group page, and you can type in things in there you might type a couple of keywords into that and it will come up with previous discussions about that same topic. So you might find the answer there already, even without having to post a new question. If you can't find it, just post the question again. It will be fine. We get a lot of recurring questions in that Facebook group. There's a cycle of questions that I see. I've been meaning to sort of make a note of the cycle, but frequently they'll come up things like, I have a new iPad, which apps do you suggest? And then lots of people will contribute to that. Or at the moment or recently there's been, I need a graduation song for my grade 5 or my, end of year thing at the moment. So what do people suggest? And people will help out with that. And it's really, really useful. Family might be a place that you can ask, questions. You might feel comfortable to ask family members. Again, it has been my experience that in the past that sometimes asking questions and getting someone to teach you something about technology, if they are not a good teacher, can be fraught with all sorts of issues as well. So choose the person wisely. Often, the most technologically savvy person may not be the best person to show you how to do something because they themselves just may not be a good teacher. I have someone in my family who's, very intelligent and brilliant, but not necessarily the best teacher because, they can get maybe impatient or frustrated that you don't know the answer already or that, that's not your experience of using the software in the first place. So find the right person and do that. My last thing that I'll mention here is that if you do have an IT person that you can call on at your school, go and make friends with them. Be really super friendly to them, not in a fake way, but genuinely, because I find it's just much easier to ask questions of a friend, someone that you're familiar with and that you have that you're comfortable to chat with on a daily basis, than someone you don't know. So I have the fear of all the time of not wanting to ask questions of people I don't know. I do get uncomfortable or shy or maybe worked up unnecessarily, I'm sure, about that. But if I do know them and I've made, a bit of headway into some kind of relationship with that person, it's so much easier to ask a question. So that leads me to my action step is to pick one person that can help you with, your tech issues from time to time. If you've got an IT support staff member at school, choose them and take them some chocolate or, some kind of little present. Make them feel good, make them, happy. I'm sure that they will remember your kindness when you're truly in need of help, and you're going to feel more comfortable, especially at those times where you need urgent help. There's a class walking in and everything's broken. Just, great if you can feel comfortable in calling on that person. So that's my first 3 tips down. After the break, we'll head on with tip number 4, 5, 6, and 7. This episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast is brought to you by Smart Music. Smart Music is the music learning platform that allows teachers to connect with students as they practice. It makes it easy to create individualised assignments, hear student recordings, and provides specific guidance. Smart Music also empowers students by providing them with immediate feedback, both in terms of rhythm and pitch. This feedback transforms practice from passive repetition to active learning. The new Smart Music brings these resources into the cloud, so they work with Chromebooks, iPads, and other devices your students use today. Best of all, you can use it for free with limited repertoire, or access the full Smart Music library with an affordable pricing model that can be customised to fit any sized program. Learn more at smartmusic.com. Tip number 4 is to take a learning shortcut. That's what I'm going to call it. Now, if you're not a fan of reading software manuals, and I say that with my tongue in cheek because, I know most people are not a fan of reading software manuals. I personally don't mind reading software manuals because I know that it's a means to an end. It's a little bit like cleaning the house. Lots of people say they hate cleaning the house, but honestly, I don't mind it because I'm looking forward to the result that it's going to give me in the end. I'm going to be really super happy when the kitchen's spotless and everything's in its place and washed and dried up. Software manuals is a little bit like that to me. I know that if I take the time to read a little bit, then I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to be much more effective in the way that I use the software. So I don't mind reading them, but I know a lot of people hate them. So if you don't want to learn by reading a book, then take a workshop, or going to a workshop is a great place to learn, because the in-person learning experience is so different to learning from a book or even online. It's a great thing. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to run workshops like that where I can talk to people in person and talk through the issues. And I've got the plan for the workshop, but of course sometimes we head off on tangents because the group wants to know something that I wasn't planning to show, and that can be a great way to learn. Also, it's just great having someone who can look over your shoulder and say, oh, I can see where you're going wrong there, or, oh, you're getting this error message because you forgot to click here first, or whatever it is. Courses as well, a one-day workshop might be one thing. You might also find that you can take an ongoing course, which is spread over some time. There's lots of online courses which you can do as well. Heading to YouTube for free videos can be really useful. The drawback of those for me personally is that a lot of the tutorial videos on YouTube are very much about how to use the software. So how to set up a score in Sibelius, or how to copy and paste music in Finale, or how to add a new instrument track in Mixcraft. All of those things are useful and necessary to know. The drawback of those videos is that they're often created by non-educators, and although it gives you that part of the information really well, sometimes you want some tips about, what am I going to do in the class with the students? What are some lesson ideas? So that's where you might want a more music education specific type of course. Now, online courses, of course, I've got a set of courses which are part of my community. There are lots of other online courses that you can take as well. Some of those online learning platforms, have online courses like, and they've all escaped my mind now, what are they called? Lynda.com and Mac Pro Video are two great websites where you can take courses. And they are the very, how to use software specific courses, not necessarily lesson ideas and so on. My online courses are all part of the Midnight Music community, so if you want to know more about those, I've got things which cover, GarageBand and Mixcraft and iPads and Sibelius and digital portfolios and flipped classrooms and all that sort of stuff. And it is very music education specific, and that's the reason I started that space up, is to put all the courses in there. If you want more information about that, head to midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer, and there's a special podcast offer for listeners of this show. Other things that you can do, I actually have a free webinar that you can join in, and it just goes for an hour or so, just under an hour I think it is. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That one's about, using different devices or software. So think lesson ideas that will work across different software and devices like Chromebooks or bring your own device situation. So, Macs and PCs and iPads. If you want to look at that free webinar, it's a webinar on demand. So when you head to the page, you'll see multiple options for times. If you don't see a time you like, you can just head back the next week and there'll be a different set of times that you can join up for. There's also a couple of other things. So the Time Institute, the Technology Institute for Music Educators, is a great place to find articles and tips about using technology in music education. So you can join and be a member of that institution. Look for conferences too. There are some great conferences which are music education specific, and often they have a music technology session or two, or a whole stream of music technology sessions as part of the conference. Here in Australia, we have a few. We don't have a lot of conferences in Australia, which they're not massive conferences, but some are very targeted and specific. And I've mentioned in a previous episode that I'm part of a one-day music tech conference series which travels around Australia, and we head to New Zealand as well, called Daytime. And again, I'll put that link in the notes. But if you're in the States, for instance, your local music association or chapter will have, some kind of conference usually, and there are often technology related sessions there, which I can highly recommend. It's just also a great place to connect with other people. A lot of my favourite aspects of attending conferences are not actually in the sessions. It's actually what happens outside the sessions at lunchtime, with the networking that you can do and hooking up with people. So a great thing to do that. So the action step for this one is to find some kind of maybe a local network that you can join to stay in touch with about events, or join your local music association and look for online learning that you can do if you're not close to something that you can do, in person, like a workshop or a conference. Tip number 5 is to ask your students. So helping you survive technology in the classroom can be made easier by asking students for their advice. Now, my students, a lot of people say to me, well, younger people, of course, they're going to be more, comfortable with technology and they don't need help with it, and, they know everything anyway. I do find that they're not afraid of technology in a lot of cases. So they're not as afraid, I think, of us older people of just having a go with technology. But they still don't know, from an education point of view, your role is still there as the teacher, and your role is still there to use that tool in an educational way to teach them something or reinforce something. So don't be afraid to ask them help with using the actual tool, and then you're the one that helps them, get the musical education aspect out of it. So students, do know stuff. They're quite comfortable, say, with an iPad, for instance. And, if you're not sure how to do something, ask them to show you, or even better, get one student to show all the other students in the class how to do something if it's a question that you're being asked lots and lots of times. The action step for this one is to maybe consider assigning a single student in a class, or maybe a couple of students, the role of the tech expert or tech genius, so that other students know that they can approach that one for help instead of approaching you all the time. It's a great way of relieving your time. So if kids are coming to you all the time, maybe you've got someone who's assigned as the smartboard expert, or the GarageBand expert, or the just general iPad expert, or maybe someone in the class is happy to learn how to kind of fiddle with the data projector to get things to look right, know which things plug into where. Great if you can get them in that role. I find their chests puff up a little bit, they get kind of proud again. I mentioned earlier, my son is like this, he's really happy that he has knowledge that can help other people. And as I said, it will free up your time a little bit, help lighten the load, and just give that student a greater sense of responsibility. Tip number 6 is to avoid doing things the hard way. Now, this is something, again, that I've learnt over time, is that as soon as I'm using a software program and I find myself doing something which is boring and maybe a little bit time-consuming or repetitive, there's probably a better or quicker way to do it. And I know this is hard to take on board, but it is truly, truly, truly worth the time stopping for a moment and taking the time to find out if there's a better way to do that thing. So this is an example of, the sort of thing where maybe you've got to do something over and over in a software program, and at the moment, the way you're doing it, it takes you, you pick up your mouse and you click on a menu, and then you click on a sub menu, and then that pops out to the side, and then you click on another thing in there, and then you click on the thing that you actually want, that in the window that opens. And by the time you've all done all of that, you've moved your mouse, you've clicked on about 4 or 5 things, and then you've gotten the result you want. That can be quite slow and tedious, especially if you have to do it quite a lot of times over. Examples of this might be, and this is a really simple example, it doesn't involve a lot of menu clicks or anything, but undoing an action in almost any program involves you, if you're doing it the long way, you're going to go up with your mouse to File menu, probably Edit menu, and choose Undo from the menu. So I know it doesn't sound a lot doing that, just going up, clicking, and then clicking on Undo. But if you can do something like learn a shortcut for that action, it's going to save you so much time in the long run, especially if it's something that you use a lot all day, every day, across lots of different software programs. Copying and pasting is another one. So most people do know shortcuts for copying and pasting. But if you did have to do it the long way, again, you're going to go drag your mouse up to edit menu, click on that, then click on copy, and then, go back up and you find the place where you want to put the information or words or whatever. Go back up to the menu, click on paste. That can all take quite some time. And just learning a couple of shortcuts to save you doing those actions can shave a lot of time off your computing life. One that I've just recently done, actually, and it's such a silly thing, these podcasts I actually record into Audacity, which is free audio editing software. And in Audacity, one shortcut that I will share with you, which is great across all programs, is that the space bar in nearly all music software programs and also video editing software programs, the spacebar will start and stop your playback line, your playhead, your cursor. They're called, different names in different programs, but that will start the playback of that thing. Pressing spacebar again will stop the playback. So that's fairly universal. Now in Audacity, there's a little unique thing it does where if you press spacebar to start your playback happening, when you press spacebar again, the cursor returns to where you started from. It doesn't stop at your finish point where you just got to. So for instance, if I pressed play on a podcast episode and it plays through 1 whole minute of me talking, and then I press spacebar again at the end of that minute, it will actually return my cursor back to the starting point. It won't stop it at the end of that 1 minute. Now, this is not a big deal. I've sort of gotten used to it. That's just an Audacity thing. I can work around it. However, when I'm editing podcast episodes, if I do make a mistake or have a gap and I want to cut that out, I'm playing through a podcast episode which might be 20 minutes long or 30 minutes or 40 minutes long. And I might go for quite some time where I haven't made a mistake. And then if I want to just stop, right at that minute there, because there's something I need to cut out, if I don't remember to click with my mouse as it's playing back, that, playback line will return right back to where I started from. And that might be 10 minutes worth of talking or something. And I can think, oh no, where did I get up to? Where was that mistake? So what I did the other day was actually take the time, and I don't even know why I didn't know this shortcut earlier. This is one of those things where I'm, thinking probably everyone knows this, maybe not. I found out that, of course, you can press a different key to do the action that I want, which is to start the playback and then stop it where it gets to. And in Audacity, in case you do want to know this as well, it's the letter X. So the letter X, if you press that, it will start your playback line moving along. And if you hit the spot where you want to make an edit of some sort, cut something out or whatever it is, if you press X again, it will stop the cursor exactly at that point. So this is sped up, I'm 16, 17 episodes into the podcast now, and I've only done this, used this for the last one, I think, of editing. That sped up my editing time a lot because I don't have to fiddle around and try to click on the right place and whatever. So do take the time, take 5 minutes and just see if you can find a quicker way of doing something. So the action step for this is to learn one single new shortcut in a program of your choice and keep using it religiously for a few days, because that's the only way that it will become ingrained in your memory and you can, remember to use it over time. So if you don't already use the shortcut for undo, I would suggest starting with that one. I actually run some live workshops and occasionally I will ban people from clicking on the edit menu and going to undo the long way. If I see people doing that, I give them a figurative slap over the wrist and I try to encourage them to use the shortcut. So the shortcut, if you're not using it already, is Control-Z if you're on a PC or Command-Z if you're on a Mac. And that is a fantastic one just to start with because it's a universal shortcut in pretty much every single software program. So if you're typing an email, for instance, and you accidentally delete a whole paragraph, pressing Control-Z or Command-Z will bring it back for you. It will make it reappear. If you're in Sibelius and, you're doing some editing of a score in Finale, if you add in a note which is the incorrect note, pressing Control-Z or Command-Z will undo that last note that you entered. And in lots of programs, you can keep pressing Control-Z or Command-Z over and over and over, and it will cycle back through all of the previous things that you've done in order. Some programs have sort of unlimited undo history, and so you can just keep pressing Control-Z, 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 and it will go back through. Be careful if you're doing that. If you press it one too many times, you may get rid of something you didn't want to get rid of, so just do it carefully. If you already know undo and you're not using the shortcuts for copying and pasting, I would suggest adding those into your repertoire. And there's, for those ones, if you're not already using them, you select something in your software program and then press Control-C or Command-C on a Mac for copy. Then you put your cursor wherever you want that thing to go and then press Control-V or Command-V to paste. And again, just really useful. Universal shortcuts, those ones as well, across most software programs too. And if you're already using undo and copy and paste and you're not doing the spacebar shortcut, that might be the third one to suggest to bring into your repertoire. Spacebar to start and stop playback works on YouTube videos as well. Even things like, I think pretty much Netflix, shows that you might be watching on TV, spacebar will often start and stop those. I'm not convinced about Netflix anyway, just double check that, I might be wrong. But if you're using video editing software, any playback type software, so things like Sibelius, Finale, Audacity, GarageBand, Mixcraft, all of those, spacebar will start and stop your playback. If you're using all of those, go and find a new one in one software program that you're using on a regular basis and add that into your repertoire. I'm actually going to probably do a future episode about favourite shortcuts, which are, really common ones, fairly useful, universal ones that you can learn and pick up and use across lots of different software programs. We've come to the final tip here, and this one is to steal, in inverted commas, steal some ideas from other people. Now, I mean steal in a nice way in that, you're going to steal stuff which has been made available by other people on purpose. So, and I'm talking here lesson ideas, lesson plans, kind of hacks for using software in a music education setting. There's lots of people that share this sort of stuff online, and I find it's growing all the time, which is so good to see. Lots of music education blogs that you can read. Teachers are very generous. The ones who are writing blog posts are very generous in talking about what they are using in class, what's gone wrong, how they're using it, how it's worked in a lesson, what didn't work in the lesson, just innovative ideas that they've come up with, original lesson ideas. Some people share full lesson plans. I've got a few on my website. I've also got some guest blog posts written on my website which are from other teachers who are talking about things they've done with their students. So it's not just me writing all the articles all the time. I've got some things on there, so you might want to take a look at those. Teachers Pay Teachers is a great place to go for any sorts of lesson plans. There are quite a number of music teachers on there. There are a few music tech lesson plans on there. I'm actually planning on getting a number of my own up there. I'll have a number of free ones, probably some paid ones as well, but I'm going to try and do that in the near future. But go and check what else is on there already. So just some great places to find information and ideas. Pinterest is, one of my favourite places to go as a place to seek out lesson ideas and just innovative things. You might find, from a tech point of view, I get inspiration from not always just other tech specific ideas or lesson ideas. I get inspiration from non-tech ideas too. So if you're just going to Pinterest and looking generally at lesson ideas that other people are doing in the classroom, you might get inspiration to, redo that in some sort of way with a tech aspect to it. That's often what I do. And I have a look there and I think, oh, that'd be great. That would work really well in this software program or as an additional activity. So, you might see some playing or singing activity and you do that with your students first, and then you might add on a tech tech-related activity after that to reinforce it or to do some creative aspect to go with that thing that you've just done, singing and playing. Some blog examples. I'd love to give you a big list of blog examples. I think that's going to have to be another podcast episode on its own. There are way too many to list here, but of course, apart from mine that you can head to, if you're an elementary music teacher, people like Cherie Herring and Amy Burns both have fantastic blogs that they share lots and lots of lesson plans. They are both very generous with the information they share there. And, you can get some fantastic information about things they're trying. They're often pioneers in the tech, sort of area with what they're doing. And they will share things that have gone wrong over time or how they've changed things to make them better over time. And that's really good to read. There's a teacher in New Zealand called Martin Emo who teaches secondary students. And so if you're doing sort of composition, songwriting stuff, he's got some great things that he's sharing on his blog as well. As I said, there are just way too many to mention. I will forget someone important if I try and list all of the great ones. So do just go and search. And once you find one that you like, you might find that they have a list of blogs that they read themselves on their website. And so you can kind of look through their list and then go down a bit of a rabbit hole when you've got some time to do that. So the action step for this one is to pick one or two new music education blogs to explore, read what they're doing and, look at how they're using technology in the music classroom and in rehearsals and lessons and so forth. That's it for the 7 tips for surviving technology in the music classroom. I really hope they're useful. Maybe you've got some tips that you'd like to add to this list. If you do, you can visit the show notes page for this episode and add them as a comment underneath. I'd love to see them there. That would be great. If you don't have something to add, maybe you'd like to tell me which was your favourite one or, which one was maybe the most surprising. I don't know. Tell me which one was most useful and I'd love to read them there. It's really great getting some comments on the website and just hearing feedback from people who are listening to the podcast. The Music Tech Teacher podcast is hosted by me, Katie Wardrobe. You can find more information and links from today's episode at midnightmusic.com.au/17. Thanks for listening and I'll see you next time.